Kevin Foster was a high school dropout that really had nothing going for himself, but he knew how to manipulate impressionable teenagers, so he essentially started his own militia, calling himself God. He was able to gather a group of teenage outcasts from Riverdale High School, and this group would be called the Lords of Chaos. They would be dedicated to terrorizing the community, so they resorted to vandalism, robberies, arson just for the thrill of it, with their biggest crime being the arson of a Coca-Cola plant. The group had actually gotten away without getting caught. They then stole several items from their high school auditorium, but they were caught by Mark Schweeves, the band director. He confiscated the stolen property, and since he recognized some of the members, he told them that they would get a visit from the police in the morning. The Lords of Chaos didn't want their reign of terror to end, so they chose to eliminate the threat. Welcome to history's biggest villains. Originally born Kevin Bates on June 16, 1977, Kevin Foster had an unstable family structure, mostly revolving around his home life with his mother Ruby. He was a high school dropout in Fort Myers, Florida. He was described as a narcissist with an erratic personality, idolizing Tim McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. Since he had no real aspirations in life, he formed a ragtag group of outcast teenagers that caused mayhem and destruction throughout the neighborhood. This group would be called the Lords of Chaos, and since Kevin was the leader, he would be referred to as God. Peter Magnotti, or Fried, was a founding member of the group along with Kevin. Chris Slim Black and Derek Mob Shields were two more young boys that were drawn to Foster. Other lesser-known associates included Chris Red Burnett, Thomas Dog Tyrone, Brad Young, and Craig Lesh. Kevin's mother owned a pawn shop, so he had access to guns, promising thrilling adventures to these misguided teens. On April 12, 1996, the group committed a series of thefts and arsons aimed at gaining infamy. They burned down a restaurant along with a birdcage containing two macaws, killing one of them, along with a church, a construction trailer, and a school bus. After all this destruction, Kevin eventually wanted to form a militia that's dedicated to terrorizing the community. The creation of the group's symbol, an incorrect drawing of the null or empty set, came from an in-joke involving a question he got wrong on a math test. On April 17th, the group wrote their manifesto, entitled Declaration of War, Formal Introduction of Lords of Chaos. They planned to mail this to the Lee County Traffic Violations Bureau, but ultimately didn't. It read, Lee County is dealing with a formidable foe of high-caliber intelligence, balls of titanium alloy, and a wicked destructive streak. Be prepared for destruction of biblical proportions, for this is the coming of a new God, whose fiery hand shall lay waste to the populace. The games have just begun, and terror shall ensue. On the 20th, a week after their formation as a group, they upped the ante on their terror, planning to destroy the massive Coca-Cola bottling plant in Fort Myers. Kevin initially wanted to destroy it on the 19th to emulate the Oklahoma City bombing that happened a year before. Just like Tim McVeigh, Kevin saw these actions as a retaliation against the government for the Waco siege, which occurred on April 19, 1993. The other three boys stole two propane tanks and placed them around the building. Kevin used a Pepsi can filled with gunpowder along with a 25-foot firework fuse, and he lit it. The group ran to hide behind a picnic table across the street so they could watch the carnage. 13 minutes later, a powerful explosion ripped through the building, causing about $100,000 in damage. 6 days after the arson, Kevin and Peter robbed and carjacked Emery Lewis. He was Derek's landlord, and he had held a grudge against him ever since he had heard him call his mom a female dog and poor white trash. On April 30th, the group planned to steal clothes from a local Dillard's for the upcoming grad night at Walt Disney World, where Kevin wanted to shoot minorities disguised as one of the Disney characters. The diversion would include a smoke grenade that he rigged with fishing wire, but as the group grabbed the costumes, the grenade turned out to be a dud. Of course, Kevin was pissed that he couldn't execute his brilliant plan, so they decided to go to Riverdale High and vandalize the auditorium. They stole latex gloves, a fire extinguisher, 2 staplers, and a bag of canned peaches to eventually throw through somebody's window. Kevin mixed gasoline in a Clorox bottle, then lit a rag and threw it through the auditorium window. 32-year-old Mark Schweeves, the band director at Riverdale, caught some of the members loitering on campus grounds and confiscated the peaches, staplers, and the fire extinguisher. He recognized Chris and Thomas, telling them not to be surprised to get a visit from the police in the morning. After Mark left, Chris angrily said, "This has to be fixed tonight, because tomorrow's a school day, so he's gotta die tonight." Although Mark had an unlisted telephone number, the group could obtain his address through local directory assistance. Most of the other boys went home, leaving only Kevin, Pete, Chris, and Derek. Of course, Kevin would do the actual shooting. Chris would be the getaway driver, as Derek would knock on the door and Peter would stay in the car and be a lookout. On their way to Mark's house, Kevin sang a chilling parody of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. He sees when you are sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Oh, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better shut up and prepare to die. Kevin Foster is coming to your house. At 11:30, they arrived at Mark's house and knocked on the front door. When they opened it, Kevin shot him in the face with a sawed-off shotgun. Authorities believe he died instantly. Kevin shot him again, this time in the buttocks, as he perceived Mark was gay. Kevin believed it was impossible to trace shells back to a shotgun because it was a smooth-bore weapon, so he left the 2 spent shells at the scene. Chris beat Mark over the head with a baseball bat to make sure he was dead, then the group fled. Based on the wound patterns, detectives on the scene focused on a love triangle they believe Mark had been involved in. At the scene, they found shotgun pellets, shell casings, latex gloves, and tin cans in his Ford Bronco, along with items traced back to Riverdale High School, including a fire extinguisher with serial number CE58753, establishing a connection to Mark's workplace. The police were working hard on the case, but their jobs would get a lot easier. On May 2nd, Craig Lesh, basically a hanger-on in the group, bragged to his ex-girlfriend Julie that the Lords of Chaos killed Mark. He told her that he had been present and was the one that knocked on the door. After a restless night, she felt that she had to tell the police what she had heard. She not only told detectives about Mark's murder, but also of the group's plans to commit armed robbery at a Hardee's restaurant where Peter and Derek worked. The police then questioned Craig. They learned that he actually wasn't at the scene of the murder. He also told them about the Coca-Cola bottle plant bombing, and this led to the arrest of the group's core members on their way to committing the Hardee's robbery. When they searched Kevin's house, police found 20 guns and arson-related materials. Brad Young and Craig Lesh were released with no charges. Chris Burnett worked on a deal with prosecutors. He would plead guilty to second-degree arson and armed robbery, and he would testify against the Lords of Chaos. In return, he would serve 2 years in jail and receive 10 years probation. Tom Tyrone also turned on the group and was allowed to plead no contest to second-degree arson. He would serve 1 year in jail with 10 years probation. In March 1997, Peter pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and was sentenced to 32 years, agreeing to testify. 2 weeks before his trial, Derek pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, filed in October by Chris. Both received life sentences. 3 other members of the group pleaded guilty in exchange for their testimony. Kevin was the only member of the Lords of Chaos to go to trial. Lee County prosecutors offered him life without parole. He turned it down, telling his attorneys that he considered this fate worse than going to Old Sparky for his electric chair. Jury selection for the trial began on March 3, 1998, presided over by Judge Isaac Anderson. During this trial, Kevin's mother testified that he was at home during the murder, although members of the group took the stand and said that not only had he been there, he was the ringleader of the plot. On March 11th, closing arguments were given and the jury went back to deliberate. After 2 hours, they reached a verdict of guilty. On April 9th, the penalty phase of the trial began, and by a vote of 9-3, the jury recommended the death penalty. On June 17th, Judge Anderson agreed with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Kevin to death. In 2000, his case reached the Florida Supreme Court, but his appeal was denied. Kevin and his mother Ruby were later convicted of conspiracy to murder, as they both planned retaliation against the members of the group who testified against them in the original trial. They were charged with the crime in 2000 after having approached author Jim Greenhill to help in the plan. Instead, he reported it to the police. Ruby was given 5 years in prison, and Kevin was given an additional sentence concurrent with his death penalty. In 2010, Derek requested clemency and was supported by former Lee County Sheriff John McDougal, the sheriff who had arrested him. John pointed out that he had been under duress at the time of the murder, as Derek also pointed out that he wasn't the trigger man. The request was denied. In 2011, Kevin sought a new trial or a new penalty phase based on a theory of inadequate representation, claiming counsel at the time of trial hadn't focused more on the issue of mental defects. The court denied relief. In 2017, he sought to have his death penalty removed based on a 2017 law signed by Florida Governor Rick Scott. It required a unanimous jury verdict to recommend a death sentence. The jury in his case voted 9-3 in favor of a death sentence. In 2018, the Florida Supreme Court denied his appeal. He remains on death row at Union Correctional Institution as of 2026. Peter was released from prison in July 2023, but no current news is known about him. Ah, man. I don't even understand, what was the point of this? Literally, what was the point? You killed him for what? And you got caught instantly. You recruited guys that could even shut up about it. Oh my goodness. Craig wasn't even there, and he's lying and bragging that he was. It's just an innocent man died because you guys just want to be kid hooligans and come on, man. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Turn my post notification on if you haven't already. Thanks. Please be safe, stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.